What's going on, guys and girls? Welcome to the Deck Talk Podcast. This week's episode, we broke down into two different sections. The first half of this episode, we had the opportunity to take a road trip to the Bassmaster Headquarters in Birmingham, Alabama, where Colin and myself had a chance to sit down with the Director of Event Operations, Eric Lopez. Now, it was a very enlightening conversation we had with Eric. But first, we have to talk about the sponsor for the first half of tonight's episode, Bucked Up Energy, an all-natural supplement that will give you better stamina throughout the day without the harsh crash you receive with other brands. Also helping to cut muscle recovery time along with boosting your endurance and libido levels. No matter what kind of physical activities you're into or just love spending time in the great outdoors, you need to check out Bucked Up. Go to www.buckedup.com. Don't forget, use that discount code DECKTALK20 at checkout. Again, that's buckedup.com. Don't forget, use that discount code DECKTALK20. All right, without further ado, let's head to the Bassmaster Headquarters and join Eric Lopez in progress.
Y'all are providing a way to where kids are actually getting an education from fishing.
Yeah.
Because they're fishing with the collegiate and high school and stuff like that. And now, like, with the technology and stuff like that, I mean, last year's rookie, all the rookies, I mean, were all hammers. And I don't foresee that it's slowing down with how, like, having the collegiate, being able to go and fish all these different high schools and stuff. But the collegiate angler, by the time they get done with their college, they are ready to be able to perform in the opens and stuff like that. And that, I mean, that opens the world to a lot of people as well. I mean, because some people don't care too much to watch professional events and stuff, but they do like watching college.
Right.
So, but they see a boat that says Auburn on it or Alabama or, you know, Carson Newman and Bethel and stuff like that. They see that, they're like, oh, that's my local.
Yeah.
And so they're going to tune into it. And then now they're hooked because now they're going to be like, all right, well, I seen this dude. Oh, now he's fishing the open. Well, now he's at the elites and whatever. So, I mean, what y'all have done has been phenomenal to where you got a little, I talk about it as like a little snowball. You got a snowball, you know, you roll it, try to make a snowman, and
Sure.
It just keeps on building. I mean, y'all are just grabbing stuff, and it's just building. And, I mean, the platform that y'all have is just, you can't go anywhere, and I bet you can say Bassmasters, and people are going to be like, oh, yeah. And so just the name and the brand for Bass has been just, I've seen it grow phenomenally. I mean, within
the growth at the youth level has just been phenomenal. I mean, I'll always remember, don't quote me on that, maybe 2007, 2008, getting word that there was a school in Illinois that was starting a program as an officially sanctioned fishing program. Like, what? Really? Like, oh my gosh. So we definitely can't take all the credit. But we're very thankful to the coaches and the participants over the year at the high school and collegiate level. We're providing the outlet for them and the trust that they put in the brand. There's a lot going on. Social media has so much to do with that because the whole crop has been elevated. Like you just said a minute ago, you've always had the elites. But by time someone's getting to the elites, they're ready. They know what to do, and they're filming it, and they're spreading the word. They're already a marketing machine. A lot of times before they even get to the EQ, the elite qualifier. I mean, they have 20,000 followers. I mean, if someone like one of the pros 10 years ago had 20,000 followers, that was a very big thing. And now you're looking at the collegiate and high school anglers that they have that, and more power to them. We love seeing that. And the other thing that's happening too is that I'm not sure if a lot of people realize that football is such a very strong sport in the country. But there are a lot of parents that are looking for alternatives to football, and their concerns about safety and injury, and they're looking for things. We see a direct correlation with that, and that has really led to an alternative sport option. What is that? Maybe is it soccer? I'm not interested in soccer. what's this over here? Fishing. So that also has happened at the same time. So that's led to the popularity of fishing at the lowest levels. So we're excited about that, and we have no idea what the ultimate end result, if there even is an end result for that, but it is interesting to see, like I said, by the time they're 21, I mean, these kids are marketing machines.
Yeah, and you're providing an avenue for young anglers that, 10, 12 years ago would have never had the opportunity to live their dream and took that chance to be able to fish on the biggest stage in the world.
Yep.
But with the high school and going on to collegiate, you're helping provide that avenue for these young anglers that are good enough that might not have, with the college now versus about 10 years ago, they would have never had that opportunity to kind of follow their dream.
Sure.
And you mentioned also with the social media end of it, a lot of people from the outside don't realize what goes into once they hit that big stage. There's a lot more that goes on to be a successful professional bass angler than just fishing on the water with the social media. You have to really know how to market yourself, and a lot of these college fishermen are actually the courses they take in college while they're competing as a college collegiate angler is in marketing.
Right.
Because once they get out of college and try to live out their dream and go fish on the pro circuits, they got to know how to be a manager as well and market themselves, because it's all about marketing in today's world.
100%, and that's an integral part of not just our sport, but sports that are similar. I just want to go out there and fish. I mean, that's a tough. If you could do that, more power to you. But I mean, the branding is very significant. The sponsorship is very significant. And you take a look at golf. There's a lot of comparisons between golf, because it's hard to compare to like the New York Mets or something, because that's a whole team that has a staff. But if you look at individual golfers, that's similar. Where they're out there, they're golfing, but they're trying to get titleists for paying, and they're selling themselves. So they can't just go out there, golf, and hope everything just comes to them. That's not the way it works. You're not going to survive that way. But you're right. High school students, collegiate students, they all have, not all of them have figured that out, but a good portion of them have figured that out, where even 5 years ago, probably it wasn't at the level that it is now. But just in our office alone, the number of proposals that we see that are coming in, I'm like, this is coming from a high school program? I'm like, my goodness, that is impressive.
Yeah.
So, and we think that that's great for the sport. Again, elevating the whole level of the sport. So for it to be seen in the same vein as other professional sports that are out there. And again, that's the goal. I mean, our mantra, like I said, and I think it bears repeating, we don't compare ourselves against other tournaments. We compare ourselves against other mainstream sports, and that's one of my jobs. It's like, how do you bring in more fans to the sport? So we are taken seriously, and we think over the years we've definitely achieved a portion of that, and we're going to continue to do that.
Now, what is, like, when you go and, like, let's say when you were talking about this year's and before y'all decided in Tulsa and stuff, what is, you kind of hit on it a little bit. You said that, like, you get other, like, the Zona and Davy and board, where would be, what all aspect do y'all look at? Do you look at it as in, we're going to have it on this weekend in March or this weekend in March? So what's going to be
for the Classic specifically?
Right.
Yeah.
So what is it that y'all? I mean, because people just may be like, well, they just have a bowl that has a bunch of lakes on it. And we just pick out the location.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I definitely, that's a very common question, and again, we don't pay a lot of attention to the comments, but or I should say I don't. But every once in a while, I'll see it when it's like, why don't they just go here? Why don't they? I just don't understand why they're not here. If it was that simple, you wouldn't have me and my team here. There is so much that goes into. That's why I said the Classic specifically. There's so many things. There is a laundry list of items that have to go in specifically for a Classic city. for years the Classic used to be in the summer.
Yeah.
It was in July. So we moved it to March. So that change years ago alone limited almost half, if not more, of the country because of weather alone. So why don't you come to my lake? I'm like, well, isn't it like 25 degrees there? And we're in the south typically for the Classic, and we still are nervous about it can be cold, and you need to have those warm days where it warms up, and thankfully that's what we do. So weather in terms of where we can have an event in March is very limiting. The expo, as you guys mentioned earlier, it's the largest consumer trade show, fishing trade show in the world.
Right.
There's nothing close to it. So it requires a lot of space. Yeah. So there are a lot of comments that we get or questions. How come you don't have, and I'm not going to mention any particular locations, but how come you don't have it here? It's like, well, do you have a 275,000 square foot convention center within an hour? No. Why do you need it? Well, because the Classic is synonymous with the expo. That's really what is bringing all those fans.
Like people, like around, they're like, well, why don't they bring the Classic to Chickamauga? And I'm like, and I say the same thing. Yeah. Where are they going to put everybody? Yeah. There's not as much. I would love to see. I mean, because we got buddies that guide and other. I mean, some YouTubers and stuff like that. That I mean, one of our buddies just like here a week and a half ago caught a 14.6 on Chickamauga, and he's been catching like just this year. His clients have put in 12 double digits on Chickamauga, and they're like, man, why don't they have it here? And I'm like, they don't have to. I mean, Chattanooga is a small, big city, but I was like, there's no room there. I mean, there's not the hotels really.
The infrastructure is significant. So from the hotel standpoint, we book hotels for our staff and our sponsors and the anglers and their family. That right there is hundreds of hotel rooms. That is before we even get into the fan component. So when you bring in the fan component, thousands of hotel rooms are required for that. There have to be airports, and there has to be an airport in the area that can accommodate. And then one of the bigger components that a lot of people don't realize is as well, and this affects the Elite Series. A lot of this affects the Elite Series, not to the same extent as the Classic. We're on television, and television is very important. We're not the only ones that are on television, and I think sometimes this frustrates a lot of people, and I get it, but I don't know that people have any thought how much we are at the mercy of the NASCAR schedule or the NCAA tournament television schedule, because we don't get to say no sport in America, maybe the Super Bowl, but even the regular season NFL doesn't have the ability to say, we want to, well, maybe they do. We want to be on this time from this hour to this hour. There are the television schedule alone drives so much, and you want to make sure you're on what's called a window. You have a window that makes sense as well. We don't want to be on at 4:00 in the morning. We're doing everything live now, so live is very, very challenging to do. But it's paying off, and we're bringing in more viewers. We have a great partner with Fox Sports. That's why we made the switch from ESPN to Fox Sports, because they gave us the ability to do live. But we have to work with Fox Sports very closely with all of our schedule making, because there's a lot of other things that are on TV. If it's not on TV, it obviously can just be online, but we wanted to, in order for it to compete with those other sports and bring in as many fans, so we continue to do this for decades to come. This is what needs to happen. A lot of people say no one's watching TV anymore, and it's like that's the furthest thing from the truth.
Now, when y'all started the Bass Live, did that ever, like, did y'all ever think that it was going to be as big as that it has become? I mean, because I know during just regular events and stuff, and y'all have it live and stuff, and I'm checking my phone, doing whatever. I got a free 5-10 minutes. I'm checking my phone, watching it and stuff, and I mean, because I was like, you know, when I was growing up, I mean, we did not have nothing. I mean, we had to wait until the magazine came out.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we, but because we've heard Dave talk like the first time that it went live, like we were scared because we didn't know if it was going to work and how acceptable it
Right.
was going to take. And did y'all ever think that was going to like take off as well as what it did? I mean, because now you're able. You've always had like a chase camera boat and stuff like that, but then now actually having a camera guy in the boat, the angler, I don't know if the anglers have, I think they're kind of used to it now, but like because they know that nothing's hidden anymore. Everything except for like taku and stuff like that. I mean that you see like the Japanese guys are more that you see or hiding. Don't show my bait. Don't. But everybody else, let's just flip the fish in the boat. Let's go on. But did y'all ever see that was
so
where it was going to go?
So the question, when I think we started around 2016, maybe when we first did live, it was a gamble. We weren't fortune tellers. So when we were prepping that, and kudos to Mike McInnes, who oversees our television production with JM. Man, that's all his responsibility. But no one would have been able at that point to predict what it would become. Partly because the technology didn't even exist to do what we fully wanted to do. Years ago we did do a classic live on ESPN. And it required hundreds of people to come in. I was there, and you had to build studios on site at the convention center in Birmingham, and you couldn't catch a fish, or we didn't catch a fish in the window. It's like, what do we do? Because the cameras had to stay so close, or you were running tapes basically from the camera. That at one point we were using helicopters to, hey, someone may have caught a fish. We have to hurry up and fly this tape back. So with the advancement of digital age and 4G and ultimately 5G technology, which allowed us to compress the video signal in order for it to be high quality enough to be on high definition television, I mean, that we didn't know that was going to happen in 2016. So for us to say we wanted that growth, absolutely, we wanted that, and said, wouldn't it be great if one day it would? But no one could have predicted that because of the advancement of technology. As there were slow advancements over the years, we're like, hey, we think we might be able to do this. Everything always led us to believe that this is what it could become. Yeah. And that's one of the great things, too, about being at Bass is that there are people, we take calculated risks. Our fans who have been with us over the years, thank you very much. I think we're not an organization that's like, now we're thinking this. Now we're going to do this. Now we're going to do this. And that's just not how we operate. I mean, but when we make a change, we want to make sure we're doing it right, that it makes sense. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer. We want to test something out beforehand because we want to be right when we finally introduce that. And that's kind of what's happened with Live. We've tested things behind the scenes. Like, okay, we're ready to roll this out. We have so much stuff that we're talking about at this very table that I think fans are going to be excited about, but we're just not going to say, let's just hurry up and get this out there. Because that's not the effective way to do business.
Yeah, and
if it doesn't work, you're going to pull something back, and that's a disservice to everyone, really.
Right. Exactly. Now, we don't want to come here and not talk about Ray Scott. Because he is, I think all professional, right there, all professional fishermen has got to say thanks to Ray Scott. Even no matter what series that they are in, that they would not be fishing that if it was not for Ray Scott. So, but we talked to, we've had David Fritz on and Shaw Grisby and stuff. So they were talking about like the early age of the Classic and stuff, like how when it first happened, like he said, you only had so many rods that you can have, but you only had one tackle box, and I forgot the weight that it said and they would weigh each tackle box, and so if it weighed over, they was having to take baits out, and so I think it was Shaw that was telling us that Ray Scott would always like to he cut up and stuff with all the anglers. And so like some of them that if he knew them very well or whatever, like when they go to weigh their tackle box, like he would put like his hand on the back side of the scale or something, and but you got to take more stuff.
That's funny. So we're very grateful, obviously, for Ray's vision. And I've been here long enough where I was fortunate. I'm one of the few here now that was fortunate to work with Ray back when I first started in the early 2000s, and for some time after that. So we put him on stage at the Classic and let him talk to the fans because we pulled back obviously in later years, but. Ray was great, and his legacy will live on absolutely forever. I mean, inventing catch and release, and it's a format that we completely believe in, and it's the dominant format that tournaments out there follow around the country at the lowest levels to the highest levels. What I love, my side of the business, Ray was a showman. If people don't know that and aren't familiar with his background, a lot of younger folks aren't familiar with Ray, but if you know the name, we say P.T. Barnum and Bailey. He was P.T. Barnum. I mean, he wanted a show. I mean, it predates my time, but we're doing the cast right now.
I was about to say that with the cast.
Our first episode of the cast features Ray, so it really gives a good background not only on Ray, but just how he created the sport of fishing, competitive catch and release fishing. But he brought in an elephant to the Bassmaster Classic, and Tripp loved to tell that story. Ray comes to me one time and he's like, "Where do I put the elephant?" And we love that because we're the ones building that stage show. And again, I talked about storytelling. That's how Ray told the story. There was one year where they did the Classic, and they created some type of spaceship that hung from the rafters and of the arena, and Ray was inside, and they lowered it, and out came Ray. That's how it's shown. It comes so much, whatever the word is. And we love that. So that's part of the legacy that Ray was an entertainer, and we want to continue to entertain. People come to see the fish. The fish are the stars of our events at the end of the day. But there's a lot of content, there's a lot of activities that need to happen around that to make it kind of like that full experience. And what happens if people don't catch fish? And so it's entertainment. We want people to enjoy it. We want them to laugh and have fun and come back. So Ray, I'm so thankful that he had that attitude towards the sport, and that kind of gave us the mantra of how to continue the sport for the next decades.
He definitely put the footsteps in the right places to be able, because again, like what I said, every fisherman has Ray Scott to thank. And
we all do.
And because you wouldn't have a job.
Sure.
And and we definitely would not be here if it was not for him. And so I like at the Classic to where the video that y'all done of him at the Classic was very heartfelt, and then talking about the cast, that I have loved watching every episode that I've been able to see it. And with having the anglers on there, like the viewers don't get that side of the anglers, because again, like what you was talking about, they just think that it's catching fish when that's just a micro speck of what the anglers do. And we was just talking to Gerald Swindle here, about 3 weeks ago, and we seen him, and I was like, "Man, why aren't you out in the woods?" He says, "Man, I wished I was." But he's like, as soon as January comes on, it's out of the trees, now back on, and so, Ray Scott has been phenomenal, just of what he's been able to build and what Bass has been able to build off of what his idea of being able to tournament fish.
And with Ray Scott's vision on the sport, and to see today where his vision first got started on this whole thing right now, and to see where that vision of his has gone and what it is today, And it's just actually growing, and it's going to get better as the years go by, thanks to Ray Scott and the vision he had on what he could vision 20, 30,
Sure.
even 100 years down the road.
Absolutely. You've asked me a couple of questions in the format of years ago when you guys were coming up with this idea, did you know that it was going to? And I fully believe that if Ray were here today and you were to ask him, years ago when you first started this in the 60s, did you know it would become that? I think he would have said yes. Yeah. I think he would have given a resounding, confident, absolutely, I did.
And he would be proud.
Yeah, and he would be very proud. Yep.
And so we've got you almost at 55 minutes, Eric, so we won't hold you too much longer. Was there a difference like when you used to do like ESPN and stuff, and is there a different way of like having to capture what's going on with bass than it was like, let's just say, college football?
Sure.
Is there a different mindset that you got to have to where this is what's going to look better, stuff like that, than what?
Yeah, yes and no. You have to understand the fans. That there are nuances where a fan, there's a different type of fan, but at the same time, you also have to understand the similarities. The people that are a lot of people that watch our events watch college football. I mean, I can go down the list, and depending on the different part of the country, so that background definitely helps, obviously. And thankfully, we have a team here of people with a wide variety of different backgrounds. You have to understand the sport, obviously. But at the end of the day, when you're building an arena for the Classic and the Expo, there are a lot of components that transcend numerous sports that are the exact same in numerous sports or conventions, whether it's someone having a Comic-Con convention or something like that. I mean, we're going about a lot of the setup, the logistics the exact same way. And that's where my background came into play. And they said, hey, we want to really build this up. I had a background. I'm not making this about me, but my background as well also included some big international events. Like I worked with a couple of Olympics and World Cup Soccers, like these big multi-sport international events. And they're like, use the background that you have that. How could you, we don't have those budgets, we're not close to those budgets, but how would you go about planning one of those events and put that in our sport? So it's a combination of what you choose and what you see and what works for other sports, but then making it applicable to our sport. And then it's very easy to tell what fans respond to and what they like and they don't like. People clap and people cheer, and they don't really boo at our events like other sports. But you can tell when people are quiet, and you're like, well, that didn't work, or they don't like this one.
Well, like last year at the Classic, there's a couple anglers that came in with no fish. There was no booing because they didn't come. It was more like the whole crowd was like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. you feel that, and if you go to a Classic, there's typically a little platform on the floor all the way at the back where our folks are controlling the lights and the audio, and then I'm right next door watching obviously what's happening on the stage, but I'm also looking at the fans and seeing what's working and what makes sense and making notes and like, okay, that worked, this one's too long, maybe we can shorten this, maybe we do this again. But that's why we do like kiss cam and different, we call them stunts, different things like that you see at other events. That's not unique to basketball. Others, but like our fans like that too, and they're used to seeing that when they go to other events. So I think in order for it to be successful, any sport, you really have to have a wide variety of opinions. No matter what it is, you don't want to be too pegged in one particular aspect. I mentioned World Cup Soccer, and we have a combination of people here who have fishing backgrounds and don't have fishing backgrounds, but they're very solid in what they do, what their side of the business is. Yeah. When I worked at World Cup Soccer, I was 18 years old when it came to the U.S., and I always remember we were doing logistics, so it was like the setup, the trucking and all that. And I always remember my boss saying, don't work in the sport you love. And that was a difficult thing for an 18-year-old to understand and comprehend. And I get what he means by that. It took me several years to understand that. And I don't necessarily agree with that statement per se, but one of the things that the tournament department, I'm pointing because they're over there, get asked, it's like, oh my God, you guys are responsible for the fishing at bass events. You must love fishing. You must fish all the time. They're probably going to tell you that they fish the least out of anyone. And they grew up and wanted to work at a company where fishing is their life. But because they're always busy, they probably rarely get to fish.
Well, that's like us. People like, because we put out videos, we're doing the podcast, and we're going to these events and stuff, and people are like, man, you must fish all the time. And we're like, man, we get out there. I mean, we still get out there a couple times a week and stuff like that. But I mean, it's not like, because this is a job for us.
It's a job. And you're absolutely right.
So we have the time. We have to look at the big picture. Like, all right, do we have the time on the water, or do we have the time to come and talk to you?
Right.
And that's what we've had to, like. I mean, would we like to be able to be out on the water more? Heck yeah! But
the love of the sport is what allows people to have the drive to do their job and work the hours.
Yeah.
And he didn't go into that level of detail because I wouldn't have processed that at that young age. But I think that was the reference. And sometimes you can be too close to the sport. And in that instance, I remember seeing executives from World Cup playing soccer we were at Shoulder Field in Chicago, on the field when competition was done. We had to turn that stadium over and give it back to the city of Chicago so the Bears can come in and play. And the executives were out there playing soccer. And his point to me was, you have a job to do right now. It has nothing to do with the sport. And I had seen it time and time again where we've hired people to work with us as contractors. And it's like, okay, we're about to have the pinnacle moment at the Bassmaster Classic. And I'm like, where are you? And they're sitting there watching. It's like, no, you're here to do a job. And unfortunately, that requires having your back to the stage. Yeah. So that can be frustrating because you're so close to a moment that you dreamed about, but you wanted to work here, and it doesn't allow you to watch that moment. So it's that differentiation. So that's why I say I think it's important to have that mix. In no way am I saying that people shouldn't love this. I mean, I'm not, and that's not the message that he was giving to me. But it's, again, like we firmly believe it's the love of the sport and the understanding of the sport that allows you to work those crazy hours and those early mornings and late nights and all that. But at the end of the day, it's still a job.
Yeah. Now, let's see. We're already at an hour, so we're going to try to wrap this up. Like right now, do you already know like where 2025? Not to give the don't say where it's at, but do you already know like we got at least narrowed it down to?
What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
An event like the Classic takes multiple years to plan, and I don't mean that sarcastically. That's another common question that we get. We do. I've mentioned the NCAA several times, and again, details behind the scenes that people don't have to ever think about. But the NCAA tournament draw, because again, we go to a lot of the similar facilities, they're booking those events 7, 8 years, 9 years out in some instances. So some of these facilities, I'll use Greenville for example. We use the arena there as Bon Secours Wellness Arena. They host the playoff rounds for the tournament. They are trying to go after those events. If they don't get one of those tournaments, they don't find out until the last minute sometimes, then they have to go after other sports. So to be proactive, they're like, okay, 5 years from now, what do you think about coming here? So yes, we make sure the timing of when we release that information doesn't get too far ahead of itself, because we want the focus to be Tulsa. That's all we really want people to be talking about. But we have kind of gotten into the pattern of making an announcement for the following year a couple weeks before the current Classic. So we do have an announcement coming relatively soon here. But yes, we are having conversations 4 or 5 years out for Classic. In some instances even longer. From an Elite Series standpoint, probably about 2-3 years out.
Nice. And because we talked to Mandy at the Classic last year, And I was like, because I knew that the Classic is not something that you start preparing months away from the Classic.
So I can tell you honestly that I, as an individual, and there's multiple, I mean, my team has their nose to the grind in terms of planning this year. I probably am one of the few people right now at this moment that is spending more time on next year's Classic than the Tulsa Classic. Yeah. By the time you get close to the Classic, and there's a lot of work. Yeah, because I mean, we got to be ready to go, and there is a lot of work happening here in the next multiple Classics, actually.
Yeah. And Mandy told us, like, because I was like, when do y'all start? And she's like, talking about the next Classic and stuff. She said it'll really start. It's like I think it was like Tuesday when y'all came back from the Classic or whatever. The first day that y'all got back into office from like Knoxville or whatever. She said we'll have a meeting right then, and that's when the.
So in the communication side, so from a communication standpoint, as the logistics guy and those people that know operations and logistics, we're starting much earlier than that. Yeah. So I mean, a Classic in terms of the amount of planning, like I said, the hotels and all the operational components, it's almost 2 years that it requires us to.
Man, that's crazy. But hey, Norman, let's wrap this up. We have a question that we ask all of our guests that comes on, and so we want to ask that to you as well, because it's kind of been like a iconic question. Everybody looks forward to, and like we had one episode that we just got into it, and then it come up to where we almost forgot to ask, and the dude was like, "Well, what about the last question?" But no, it's nothing. I mean, nothing real big, but it's just
But anyway, Eric, if you were to hit the lake and were to have one person that you wanted to fish with you for the day, and this person could be passed away or he could be still with us, he or she, who would that person be, and why would you want to fish with him for the day?
It would definitely be Ray Scott. I mean, without a doubt. I got to know him probably the last 10 years, maybe 15 years of his life, and I'm very impressed by people who have that vision. And we talk, you asked the question, we talk about our individual visions for small components. Yeah. But I'm very, I'm fascinated, I should say, by people who have visions of grandeur. Yes. And it's not just this. I'm not looking at building a building. I'm looking at building a city. Yeah. And that's exactly what he did. And when I find myself reading books and studying people throughout history, those are the type of stories that I went to. And that's why I said I think he would have answered the question. I knew what it was going to become. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't have known the technical components and stuff like that. But he's like, yes, this is the way we envision it. Yeah. And it's like, to have a plan like that when everyone is telling you, how are you going to do something? You realize how silly this sounds? Yeah. Yes, I realize how silly this sounds, but he risked so much, and I have the utmost respect for that. Yeah. So without a doubt, without hesitation.
That's awesome. But guys, thank you for watching, and I hope this gave you some insight of really some behind the scenes of what it takes to put a Classic on, as in with having the media, having to talk to the town or the city that you're going to be in, because you're bringing in thousands of people to come into one city. So you got to organize all that and have all the stuff to where everybody's safe as well. And to doing the expo, building the stage, and being able to have it to where the boats can enter or whatever, to where it's going to look the best just for the viewers and where everybody can have the best time that they can have. So Eric, man, we thank you so much. This has been very awesome. Just to be able to sit down and chat. We got to see some of it last year, and but we definitely look forward to seeing you here in March.
Absolutely. So, can't wait to see you guys. So, you'll see me running around like a chicken with my head cut off.
Yeah, we'll make sure we stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Guys, live the passion, and remember, mark on your calendar, Tulsa. Coming up pretty quick, and I guess it's a little over a month now. So
49 days.
Yeah.
It's got it counted down. So, guys, thank you again. I hope to see you out on the water. And let's see you out in Tulsa. Let's fill Tulsa, that arena up, and let's make it bigger than Knoxville.
Absolutely.
So,
Okay, we hope you enjoyed the first half of tonight's episode with Eric Lopez from Bassmasters in Birmingham, Alabama. Now we're going to have an opportunity to sit down with Chris Martin, Field Marketing Manager for Diawa U.S.A. for the second half of tonight's episode, which is also brought to you by Diawa U.S.A. Hope you enjoy the second half of tonight's episode, tight lines, and always live the passion.
Alrighty, what's up, Deck Talk podcast listeners? This is Chris Martin. We're looking at the Daiwa Tatula Elite PF. So the PF model is going to be our pitch and flip specific reel. We've got that nice oversized handle knobs, great for comfortability, easy to grab onto after you've made your pitch, easy to find that handle. The next thing on these reels that's going to aid in pitching and flipping is going to be a very lightweight spool. The other really unique feature is the braking system inside of the side plate. Available in a 7.1 to 1 as well as an 8 to 1 high-speed gear ratio, guys.
Okay, guys. Welcome back to Deck Talk, the Deck Talk podcast. Colin, we have a great guest on right now with us. We met this gentleman, about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I guess, at the Big Rock Outdoor Show in Nashville. Anyway, he is the field marketing specialist for Diawa U.S.A. Mr. Chris Martin, what is going on, my man? Good to see you again.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming on, and it kind of worked out pretty decently. I mean, it's 9:15 our time, and it ended up being it's about 6:15 your time. So so it kind of worked out. We did make it around the 6 o'clock, guys, because that's when we typically do it. We just done it on the West Coast time. but Chris, man, we want to thank you for coming on, and want to say again, thanks for doing that video with us here back in January, because and apparently people really enjoyed it, because that is our number one viewed commercial has been for the Daiwa what the reel the
pitch and flip.
the FS, right? Or
PF.
The PF, sorry.
Yeah.
And but that reel there, guys, if you have not seen that video, go check it out, because Chris, I mean, he breaks it down to a T, to where if you're looking for a reel you're wanting to do some punching and stuff like that, that reel is the jam. We got to hold it and be able to kind of play around with it, and talking about, Daiwa reels period are my favorite reels. That they fit in your hand just perfectly. You don't have you can go out there for 12, 14 hours, and if the wife allows you, but but you can go out and fish all day long, and you don't have that fatigue. So people think about trying to lighten up a rod. They don't really think much about trying to lighten up the reel, but Daiwa has, I mean, they are one of the lightest reels that I have ever put in my hands, and the most comfortable. And everything's right there to where if you got to loosen up the drag, you have that big old fish on, you got to loosen that drag up. It's all right there. I mean, easily to do. And you just get ready to yank on some big fish when you have that sucker on. So where, if somebody's wanting to buy, because y'all have some, I don't want to say lower end, because people think that it's cheaply made.
Right.
And Daiwa, even the low end, is really what most people consider mid to high end quality of stuff. And so I don't want to say that, but can you kind of, you know what I'm talking about? Can you talk about the kind of steps that you have of different from the lower end of Daiwa reels to the higher end?
So, I mean, in the bait casting lineup, our big flagship is the Tatula series. And yes, that is how you pronounce it. A lot of guys get a little different pronunciations here and there. Tatula, Tatula. But yes, we pronounce it as Tatula. And that's, like I said, that's the flagship in the bait casting series. It has, I mean, all of the features that a hardcore to a casual angler really is going to benefit from during their time on the water. In that we'll call it lower tier, you would be starting at a Tatula CT. So the Tatula CT, I don't have one here, unfortunately.
I found that I did have one.
Fantastic.
But this is the CT.
Yeah, the CT is the starting point. Like you said, it's the first reel that was your taste of what Daiwa can offer you as an angler. Yeah. The CT has all of the basic features, basic construction, and then you just move up from there. So the most important feature to me on the CT model that gives people that real taste of what Daiwa can offer them is the T-wing system. So, I mean, that's that T-wing style line guide. I've got a reel here that I can show you on. This is a different Tatula, but it'll suffice. But you can see that line guide, channels line onto the spool, evenly in that downturn position. Turn over this way. There we go. But, when you go to open it up and take a cast, it opens up to that much larger aperture. And so, guys get that in their hand and they can feel, the better distance cast that they can get. But, along with that, because you're not fighting the friction of that line going back and forth like that through that line guide, you're getting more accuracy and more control. You're not fighting it. Your braking system's not fighting against that. So, that's a big factor for the guys to experience. That T-wing level wind system is really a game changer for a lot of
them. Excuse me. And that was one thing that I have noticed, and just like what you said, the friction on it, because the regular other reels, let's see, I do have. We're not going to say any names, but you see, it's just got the little circle,
right?
And that circle does cause a lot of. It's just like it's going through an eye. Is pretty much like what that does. So, and that when that line's going through that eye, it's causing a little bit. It might not be much, but it's causing some friction, which kind of goes back to like what you were saying with the accuracy. That with that being that the top of that T is allowing that line, and it's just, and you do have a longer cast.
You talk about the friction. The friction. As it goes through the level wind on the reel. Well, friction's always talked about with the way rods are designed and the way your guides are designed on the rods, where a lot of the new rods that's being built today, well, the idea behind it anyway is no friction as the line travels through the guides.
Right.
No friction, you get longer cast, with more friction on your line as it travels through, you're slowing down your line speed. Mm-hmm. Well, you get longer cast with less friction. Well, with less friction, you get longer cast, but you get improved accuracy as well. Yeah. So that's one of the cool things, like Colin's talking about, with the way the Daiwas are designing their level wind. And I believe I'm spot on with this, Chris, when I say this, where you have or I guess I should say less or no friction as it goes through as the line travels through the level wind on the reel itself. So that's going to be a big attribute to, just like you talk about with the way the rods are designed, where the line travels through the guides, you don't want any friction. Well, the same with your reels. If you're getting friction through your reels, you're slowing down your line speed, which in turn is going to mean you're going to get less distance on your cast and lower accuracy. So if you got with Daiwa actually stepping up to the plate with the reel, the way the line goes through the level wind, it's just an added bonus on a lot of the reels that I see today, like Colin's talking about. Just doesn't have that great attribute to them.
I mean, I try to explain to people, when they see the T-wing, it's like, think about it, when you were a younger angler and you were trying to pair a spinning reel up with a bait casting rod. That's basically what you're doing with any other brand or any other style of reel. You're fighting, that's an exaggerated, example, but I mean, it really does get the point across that pinch point as that line is leaving the reel. I mean, on a larger scale, that's essentially what it is. You're trying to force all this line at a very high rate of speed through a very narrow opening. And it's just it's a recipe for not only backlashes to happen, but like you said, it's going to hinder your casting distance. So the T-wing system is definitely a key feature. I mean, and like I said, it starts at just that Tatula CT, which is $150 price, $149.99 price point, starts you out with that awesome technology. Moving on from there, though, you combine that T-wing, the freedom that the T-wing gives you, right, which is great, but with that freedom, you also need to be able to control that cast and prevent that spool from overrunning. So on the CT, you will also get a MagForce casting system. So what that is essentially is if you open up any Tatula style reel, you'll see on the inside of the side plate those circular magnets that surround a portion of the spool. And other brands will use what I refer to as like a button magnet style system, where you've got just these little dot magnets going around in a circle, but not actually encompassing a complete part of the spool like the Tatulas do. So you've got the complete lack of friction, or almost complete lack of friction on that T-wing, but you've also got this advanced braking system, this magnetic control system that is actually forcing that spool into that magnetic field and giving you the control you need to prevent a backlash while maximizing your casting distance. And again, all the entire Tatula series has some form of that braking system and that T-wing, but you just step up in terms of the quality of that technology as you move up.
Right. Now, and the thing that, like, since we're on the braking system, that I've noticed, there's no way that I could have gone 2.5 years without cleaning any other kind of reels, just because of the braking system there. I mean, because just the dirt and grime that gets into it, eventually that braking system just does not work at all, because it's all the grime and stuff in it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I want to mention too, Chris, is you were mentioning that the price point on the CT is right in the $149 range.
Yeah.
In today's world, there's a lot of anglers that's really not in the position where they could go out and buy a $250 reel. But the one thing with Daiwa, like the CT, like their starting price, $149, I would equivalent that to a lot of other brands, their $250 price point reels, as far as the quality and the design of the reel. So you're getting a very good reel. You're kind of getting a high-end reel for a very good budget type price point for a lot of anglers that can't afford to just go out and spend $250 on a reel. You're still getting that
price
type of
point,
quality in the reel.
Right. I mean, that's kind of like what I was saying earlier, like the price point of thing. That's why I didn't want to say low end, because I know that the quality of the reel that you're getting, even though it's $140, $150,
exactly,
that you're actually, when you have that in your hand, if you was to have the same components in another company's reel, that's going to be a $200, $225, $250 reel.
Right.
And Daiwa has that on their low end as well. So they're not just looking at just trying to make a top of the line in reel to where any of the other reels that's below it does not compare to what it is.
No.
To where,
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost, Norman, it's almost to me, it's like Daiwa's looked at our main focus is to put reels out that's going to be high quality reels. If it's our $150 reel, or if it's our top of the line reels that we have going out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The phrase that I like to use when talking about that lower tier, again, lower tier is
that's
another
what
one.
I need to say. I need to start saying that just because.
But also best value. Best value is another great way to describe that tier. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the Tatula lineup, it spans, from that 150 all the way up to, I think, 329 for the top end or the largest size Tatula that we make. But, really for me, what I would consider the next best reel in that lineup, I mean, it's a tough choice. You have the Tatula 100, that previous generation model.
Yeah.
The current generation Tatula 100 that we have right now, it has that T-wing level wind system. It has a mag force braking system. It's stepped up a little bit with what we call a hyperdrive system. Essentially, what hyperdrive is a system of 4 components. The most important to me are I'll name first. Is the dual bearing supported pinion, or hyper double support. That basically means that, unless you've ever worked on a reel, it's kind of hard to describe, but essentially there's 2 gears that actually rotate the spool. You've got your pinion gear, which is a small gear, and then you've got your drive gear, which is the big gear that applies drag pressure. This pinion gear, the way that it's oriented inside of the reel body, is supported on either end of it by a bearing. That's unique for a Daiwa reel. What that means is that pinion slides in and away from the spool very smoothly. There's no rattle back and forth going in and out of gear, but also it keeps it completely steady inside of the reel body, pressing against the drive gear. So you don't have gear chatter between the pinion and the drive gear. The other important thing while we're on the gears is what's called the hyperdrive gearing. That gearing is a very unique cut to the gears. What that cut does is it's actually on the very top of the gear rather flattened. And it has that curved shape to it like most gears do. But with the cutting that's done on it, allows for a 3-point contact between the pinion and the drive gear, as opposed to a traditional gear that maintains 2 points of contact. So you've got 3 points of contact between those gears. That's basically means it's going to be in constant contact with each other. So you've got just this absolutely buttery feeling rotation. When I got my first SV70, which also has the hyperdrive, put line onto it, started taking casts, and I had to look down at the spool to make sure that I was actually bringing in line, because it just feels like nothing's happening. But that's just how smooth it is. But along with it being those 3 points of contact that make it buttery smooth, which a lot of anglers are looking for, and that's great. But in the long term, those 3 points of contact, because you're spreading that pressure across more points, you're going to get a longer gear life. You're not, especially when you're fighting with big fish or fighting with longer drag runs, you've got to really winch those fish in, and you're applying a lot of pressure on those gears. With only 2 points of contact over time, that is going to cause those gears to get rougher. So those 3 points of contact extend that gear life, make it feel buttery smooth. Couple other points with hyperdrive are what we call a hyper armed housing. That means it just has a reinforced body, prevents any kind of flex to the body, which can cause issues with gear chatter and things like that, bearings moving out of place. The last important thing for the hyperdrive system is going to be the hyper clutch. That's the system that allows the reel to go in and out of gear. It's just, it's smooth, but it's also powerful. When you're going in and out of gear, there's no question one way or the other. So that's the full rundown on hyperdrive. Like I said, it could be a whole video, but that's the long and short of it. But that's what goes into, that next level. You go from the Tatula CT that features, the T-Wing and the MagForce system. Then you bump up another $50 to that $199 price point. You get that plus this entire hyperdrive system, PXBF 70. It's a complete new application of bait casting reels to our lineup. It's gotten a lot of popularity over the last year and a half, 2 years or so. It's kind of in a category on its own. The beauty of the BFS system, bait finesse system, is that it gives anglers the ability to throw what lures that would normally force them to throw on spinning tackle, allows them to now throw it on bait casting. Well, you might think, why would you want to do that? We already have spinning tackle. The reason for me is that with bait casting, you get more accuracy. And you're not fighting line twist. You're not fighting the wind conditions, bowing your line out. The bait finesse system is allowing anglers that would, like I said, normally have to throw spinning tackle without the hassle of line twist or inaccurate casts. So it's a category all on its own. It's going to be a step up above a Tatula, up above a Tatula, standard Tatula 100, but, not quite all the way to a zillion. The PXBF models are going to be, as far as like price point and, the construction and the build, going to be on point with a zillion model. But we also have the Tatula BF that's going to be, Tatula standard.
But, and with that reel, and my opinion, with having that, like the finesse reel as a bait caster, you're actually able to kind of beef up your rod a little bit better, in my opinion, to where you might be just kind of using some finesse baits or something like that, to where you're having to get them out of some trees and stuff like that. So now with this, having the bait caster, you're actually you're still able to use like a heavier rod to be able to use that, but that reel is allowing you to be able to throw those light weights that you.
They are the one thing that I talked to a lot of guys about in the bait finesse market is, yes, you do get a little bit more power compared to a spinning reel. Where it gets a little bit, I don't want to say dangerous, but where you have to have caution is that with those lighter weight baits, they're generally going to have a thinner wire hook. So you really do have to pair it with a rod that has some forgiveness in it. Generally looking for a rod that has more of like a regular action, or if it does have a fast action, you want to make sure it has a really soft tip. Something like, the Megatop construction that some of our Steez rods have. You want to have that really good forgiveness in the tip of the rod to prevent you yourself from accidentally putting a little bit too much pressure and pulling that hook over. But other than that, you do have the power.
Yeah, and with you talking about the rods, I do want to get into that here in a little bit, just for the fact, because, well, we got to put them in our hands there in Nashville.
Yep.
And but we have a local bait shop here that has the rods and the reels and stuff in stock, and so I was able to actually play more with them in their shop, and the comfort, and not to trying to to go away from the reels, because I still want to talk about the reels, but the rods almost, if you go and let's say you want to go and have like a custom rod built, and the pairing up with the reel and stuff, the feel that you have with those rods, to me, almost gave it a custom feel to the rod and how it feels and how light and everything, and still have the backbones and stuff. It's almost, Norman. It is almost like having a custom rod with a Daiwa reel on it.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's important to me as well. Is you don't only want a comfortable reel, because you got to face it, you're on the water in some cases 8, 9, 10 hours a day,
Sure.
from morning to evening time. So comfort level is important for me. But the one thing you talk about comfort, with the reel, the handle, you get the tingling in your fingers after a while with a lot of different applications. That's one thing cool with Daiwa is they're so comfortable. Like we're talking a little bit ago about the reels and how they're designed, and the comfort level that you have, the lightness. You don't get the fatigue in your fingers fishing it all day. Well, the rod's no different. You want a comfortable grip, you want a comfortable handle. You don't want to get the fatigue in your forearm, and a lot of that fatigue in your forearm over time comes from the way you're gripping the rod, or the way the handle is designed, the way the rod's built, the lightness of the rod, the heaviness of the rod, or whatever you have. But that's one of the cool things with Daiwa is the actual grip you get and the feel you get. It kind of gives you less fatigue in your arm, your hands. You don't get the tingling. You don't start cramping up as easy when you're out all day. But and I think that's kind of what Colin's getting at, is just the way the way the grip level is on them is just top notch.
Yeah, I mean our development team, they really are thoroughly in touch with the input from not only just us here inside at Daiwa. We've got our elite team that helps us design our Tatula Elite rods. Some of them are in the Bassmaster series, some of them are in the MLF series. They take their input, pretty seriously as far as, what the market wants to see in a rod, what makes it more efficient, comfortable, less fatiguing. They take that very seriously, and they're very much open to understanding how Americans like to fish their equipment, and how long of a day we're willing to put on the water with it. So when you've got a really talented team of engineers that work with us, that are open to hearing our suggestion, as well as the professionals out there that are doing it, it's a win-win. And anytime a reel is designed or a rod is designed, it's designed generally around either one reel or a series of reels. So when the testing comes in, it's not just we design one rod and it comes in, and we pair it up with a reel and say it's done. It's no, we put this rod, we get a sample of the actual rod blank itself, put a reel on it, see how it feels. Okay, that feels good. Now let's get some guides put on it and see how that feels. Okay, those guides don't feel quite right. Let's change it up. So there's a lot of renditions that go into it before you see any of our rods come onto the market. There's definitely a purpose and a reel that has been tested with that rod, and there's more to the equation than one might really think. Of course, our rods can pair up with pretty much any reel, but we definitely have a direction as far as the development goes.
Right.
Yeah.
And but y'all just don't focus in on the freshwater as well, correct?
No.
Y'all also have a lineup for saltwater, and those rods are just I've never used them. I mean, because we're the closest saltwater to us is 5.5 hours away.
Sure.
But just seeing them on display and stuff at ICAST, and you had some at the Nashville show and stuff like that. Just seeing them, I'm like, these things are beast.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I probably should have prefaced the start of the show by saying I am predominantly a saltwater angler. I'm out here on the West Coast in California.
We won't
tend to
hold that
do-
against you.
Yeah, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I really do. I get some funny looks wherever I go across the country, and I go a lot of places. But no, please don't hold it against me. We're trying to do the right thing for the country out here. But anyways, yeah, I mean, in the saltwater line, I mean, I fish saltwater 90% of the time out here in California. You know, I do enjoy a little bit of pond hopping, a little bit of, trespassing on golf courses here and there, and, all that kind of stuff. But, as far as big lake fishing out in California, it's different than a lot of other parts of the country. If I'm going to go seriously do some largemouth fishing, I'm going to do it while I'm out in Texas. I'm going to do it while I'm out in, other states across the country. California is great. Everybody talks about, the big largemouth and, the big trouts and big swim baits thing and how it all started out here. And, that's cool and all, but, I've been slinging 7-inch surface irons at Calico Bass at Catalina since I was in my early teens. So, throwing a big bait at a green bass, it's cool and all, but, I'd also much rather have an easy day throwing a chatterbait over some grass for some largemouth out in Texas, or throwing a spinnerbait along a bank and just getting walloped. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, as far as the saltwater lineup goes, Japan is very diverse. They've got Lake Biwa out there that they do a lot of their testing on, and it's, world renowned for big fish, or at least it was at some time. But our development guys are definitely in tune with the saltwater market just as well as they are with the freshwater. The truth is, you don't have to take that far of a leap from your freshwater stuff. I mean, if like I was showing you, this is my Tatula SV70 that I use 90% of the time when I'm out freshwater fishing. It's not a huge reel, but it travels well. It's nice and small. You can do a little bit of everything that I really need it to do. But you take a reel like that, or really, any of our low profile bait casters, if you're going to go into the saltwater market, we make a Lexa, which is
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, this is a Lexa 300 model. This is a low profile bait casting reel. Looks, behaves, feels just like a freshwater bass fishing reel, and that's why I love it. I mean, this is a 300, and I've used this reel to catch yellowfin tuna well up into that 30, 40 pound mark. So the guys that are apprehensive about, I've been fishing largemouth for so long, I don't have to go out and buy all this crazy tackle that I'm, not familiar with. Look at the Lexa lineup. Look at the Daiwa lineup. We've got stuff that's applicable for all skill levels. And like I said, you don't have to go from something you're totally familiar with to way out of the woods for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that Lexa 300 you just showed there, Chris, the main difference between that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the main difference between that, besides the handle, the handle and the grip size, the main difference is your spool capacity, correct? For saltwater reels?
Definitely. Yeah, spool capacity for sure is a big factor for the saltwater reels. It also has a larger drive gear, so you've got, more surface area for your drag washers. 300 like that is maxes out, I think, like 28 pounds of drag pressure. A traditional Tatula model is going to net you right around 13 pounds of drag pressure. So you've got, you're stepping it up, for saltwater game fish, you're stepping it up quite a bit, but the mechanics are all the same.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, just how that, because most of like all that I've seen, again, I'm not around the saltwater that much, but all the saltwater reels and stuff that I've seen have always been like so bulky.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, what do I do with this? you go out there and you fish for a couple of hours and you're just wore out just for
a lot of them bigger, bulkier reels too, designed for saltwater. Even the casting reels that's big and bulky, it's hard to really cast them all day long. if you are casting versus trolling or dragging out there. Where that's another thing with that Lexa 300 you just showed is you can pretty much cast that all day long. And again, the fatigue factor you're not going to have because the way the reel's designed, it's more of a low profile, smaller, compact, but it's designed for saltwater. So pretty much cast it all day versus a lot of your bigger, bulkier reels that's designed to do the same thing as that Lexa 300. In a smaller profile.
It's totally commonplace, on a lot of saltwater boats. You will see those big round style reels, and there is a time and a place for those. Don't get me wrong, there absolutely is a time, a place, a species of fish where you do definitely need that size of a reel, that type of a reel. If you're going to be going after marlin, if you're going to be going after big bluefin tuna, things of that nature, they've got their place. But as far as, general inshore and light grade offshore, whether it's, you're inside looking for, snook, redfish, jacks, even just because you want to catch something to pull on, or if you're going to be going offshore looking for amberjack, red snapper, smaller grade tuna. Like I said, yellowfin are a lot of fun on these smaller reels. You don't need to go up to that big honking reel, and you don't need to go to something that a freshwater angler is not already familiar with.
Yeah. And you just said pretty good there, Chris, with going out and having fun. If you're a sportsman and like going out and enjoying the fight of the fish versus just winching the fish in. I mean, you go out dolphin all day long.
Sure.
I see people going out saltwater fishing and I don't want to say smaller game saltwater fish, but because they're still 50, 60, 70 pound fish, but you're not talking about the massive
marlin,
sailfish, marlin, stuff like that.
Yeah,
but you get a lot more enjoyable day because you're having some fun reeling them in, where you're not just getting on it and cranking them in. So that reel you're showing there, the Lexa 300, I mean, you could have a blast just going out catching 40, 50 pound dolphin all day long. Bonita, I mean, down in South Florida, you get the bonita, you get species like that they get 50, 60 pounds.
Yeah.
Well, you catch them all day long on that reel, but you're going to enjoy reeling them in versus, I mean, it's more of a sportsman type of reel. Go out there and just have fun.
Absolutely. I mean, it's also a reel that, guys can use for that want to throw big swim baits, which is becoming a more and more popular. It started in California, but it's gotten bigger and bigger.
If you don't have a big swim bait here on Chickamauga, you're missing out.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But I want to talk about the quality, like the one thing that I've noticed, Chris, about the Daiwa is like with the spool, like when like you could take the spool and like on other rod or other reels and you can move it side to side and it has a little play to where the Daiwa, you know where I'm going with this, right?
I do. And I'm so glad that you brought it up because we're going to educate so many people right now.
Where I'm going with this is like if you was to have another company's reel, that spool, you could actually put your finger on it and go left to right with it. And that spool is going to move left to right. And the Daiwa, everything is it's made to fit into it. It does not move. And I think that may be another thing, not just to where, one, you're not backlashing, because now if you got the spool moving and that line moving two different directions and then it's looping up, and so you're not going to backlash as much. And then so if you have one thing that's staying still, and so that line's coming off freely and you're more accuracy. And I think just thinking about it now, and as we were talking, I was like, I need to talk about that, because that is one important thing about these reels that I wanted us to hit for sure.
Yes.
I'll add one thing to that, Colin, real quick before Chris starts explaining about it. Is not only what you just talked about, Colin, as far as the backlashing and the more better accuracy because you don't get the spool movement, the spool play, but as well the longevity of the reel. Because anytime you have movement, no matter if it's side to side, forward to back, you're getting wear on the parts when you have moving parts, especially when you have a reel for 2-3 years and you want to hang on to that reel because it's a great reel. But now when you get moving parts, you're lowering the longevity on the reel as well because it's wearing on them parts as it's moving. Where you get a tighter fit reel, you get a smoother reel because you don't have that play in it. Where you're going to get a reel that's going to last a lot longer because you're not getting wear and tear on the parts as that spool's moving metal against metal.
Yep. Right. All right. So we're talking about the cast control systems on Daiwa bait casting reels. They do not behave like a traditional bait casting reel. They do not behave in the way that they don't calibrate the same way that all of our uncles, fathers, grandfathers taught us how to calibrate a bait casting reel. I'll say that right again. These reels, the traditional method of winding your line up to your rod tip and pressing the free spool and having that bait drop down and tightening that knob to the point where you get that slow descent does not apply to a Daiwa reel. Okay? Straight up and down. Where these reels differ in that comes down to the magnetic braking system in the side of the reel and that cast control knob on the handle side of the reel. So, like you were showing earlier, with that freedom of movement of the spool, probably easier to show you on this Lexa model. They have that. I'm all backwards here, but it's all right. They have that exposed cast control knob, right? And a lot of guys like to back that off as far as they can, thinking that they're going to get the most freedom of that spool, meaning a longer distance cast. And I can't tell you how wrong that is, along with what Norman said about the degradation of the material of the spool. You're not getting the optimal cast control. You're not getting the optimal features that the reel has. So like he was saying, when you back that cast control knob off, you get that clicking of the spool back and forth inside of the housing of the reel. When I was working customer service, I worked customer service when I started with Daiwa for almost 4 years before I moved over to our marketing team. And that was a call that we got a lot of the time is I can't get the reel to calibrate right. I got this weird chattering sound happening. I don't feel like my magnetic braking system is working. What I'm about to tell you is going to change all of that. For any of you anglers that are out there fishing with a Daiwa reel and are using that mentality, please listen up. So the way that these reels operate, particular to the Tatula series, is that cast control knob on the handle side of the reel now only operates as a governor to keep the spool centered within the housing of the reel. So you might notice on some of our newer model reels, they have what's called a zero adjuster cast control knob. It's very hard to maneuver that. That's on purpose. It's set to the optimal setting from the factory. So what you want to find is basically about 1/100th of an inch of play back and forth of that spool within the housing. Once that's done, the adjustments that you make for your lure weights, wind conditions, air resistance of a lure, any of that kind of stuff is done with the magnetic braking system on this side of the reel. Now, kind of going back to that old mentality of winding your bait all the way to the rod tip, pressing the free spool and dropping it down.
Yeah, there.
Whether you have this dial set on a 0 setting or all the way up to a 20, dropping it down from the rod tip is going to have the same speed of descent. And that's because it takes the force of a cast, the rotation of that spool, to throw what we call an inductor, which is a piece of the spool that is semi-attached to the spool. It throws that inductor into the influence of that magnetic braking system. So without the force of a cast, that inductor is going to stay tight to the spool, and it's going to have the same speed of descent. Okay. So when you're calibrating these reels, it does require you to take a little bit of a cast and see if you feel like you can get a further distance cast, then you're going to dial that down and take another cast. Okay. I've dialed it down, but I felt like I was going to get a little bit of an overrun there. I'm going to kick it up about 2 more notches and take another cast. It's that easy to calibrate these reels. It's a little bit of trial and error, and it will vary depending on the lure that you're throwing and the conditions that you're fishing in. So if you're fishing in a situation where you've got a headwind or a slight wind going sideways, you might need to dial that up a bit to counteract that wind resistance. If you're throwing like a jig or something that has a little bit less air resistance through the water and you're trying to get a longer distance cast, let's change that from a jig to like a chatterbait, because a jig you're generally not throwing long distance, but like a chatterbait that you're throwing over grass, you're trying to get a long distance cast. With that, you're going to dial that down, okay, so that you can maintain that maximum distance. In the situation where you've got that wind blowing at you, you might need to dial that up, but it's easily adjusted with that knob on the side of the reel. So again, when you get a Daiwa reel that has that zero adjuster side, that side knob on the side plate of the reel, leave that as it is. Do not back it off, because number one, what will happen is with it too free, with the spool too free, it will slide towards the handle side of the reel, which is going to eliminate that inductor from getting into the influence of that magnetic braking system. So you're losing all of the cast control that this is trying to offer you.
Yeah.
So leave it as it is when it comes from the factory. That's as loose as it will ever need to be. Any adjustments that you need to make, simply do them with the palm side adjustment dial there. Now, there's only one situation where I say that differs, and this is coming from a saltwater aspect, is that you're generally, if you're going to be throwing heavier lure weights that are streamlined, move through the air very easily, I would say anything above about an ounce, you'd be welcome to tighten that knob down to apply direct friction onto the spool or spool shaft. There is no reason to ever go less than the factory setting, though.
Yeah. Wow. And that's one thing, because here this past year, I got my dad started throwing a bait caster, and trying to teach a 72-year-old man how to throw a bait caster has been fun. And so I got him, I forgot the rod that I got, but I gave him one of my elites. And so, and he's looking at everything, trying to figure it out. And so he kept on, like, he would backlash and backlash and backlash. And I'm like, what are you doing? There's no way you should be doing all this.
Yeah.
And so he'd hand it to me, and I'd clean out the backlash, and I don't touch that knob. So I didn't think nothing about it. So after about like the 5th or 6th time, I'm like, what is going on? And I would take it and I could throw it, and he doesn't use his thumb. So that's another issue that kind of,
it's a big
that
factor.
I thought that might have been his factor that was causing that. But when I was like, here, throw this and I'll figure it out. And I took his rod and I was playing around with it, trying to figure out what was going on. And then I realized, like, he had loosened that knob, and because he was just playing. And so, and he kept on backlashing. And I was like, I figured it out, and that's what it was.
Yeah.
So
We
And
see
with
it
you
all the
saying that,
time.
Chris, with you saying that too, Chris, the first thing anglers do or fishermen do when they go buy a brand new reel from the bait and tackle shop, they spool it with line, they put a bait on the end of it and go out to go fishing. Well, what's the first thing most anglers do when they think they're, and most anglers don't really know, they don't really know the correct way to adjust reels. Some do, but a lot do not know what they're doing when they're trying to adjust.
Well, what
reel.
we'll do when
But
we're
the first thing fishermen do when they buy a reel is the first thing they start turning and messing with is that spool tensioning knob that you're talking about. They will Daiwa that you leave it at the factory setting. And like you said, if you have to go a little bit tighter but never go any looser than the factory setting, and I'm glad you kind of brought that up with Daiwa because, whether it's Daiwa or whether it's other brands, that's the first thing a fisherman does when they go think they're adjusting their reel.
Well, that's what they were told.
Even go to the magnetic setting. First thing they do is go to the spool tension knob and start turning it back and forth.
Yeah.
And most anglers really don't know what they're doing in the first place, but they think they do.
I can't tell you how many young anglers, and I mean, most of the time it is the younger kids that will come out there, and like you said, they think that they know what or how to calibrate a reel. They're used to using another brand, whether it's a Luz, an Abu, a Shimano, or whichever it is. They will just naturally pick up that reel and test it to see if it's loose enough, not realizing that they're not getting any of the advantages that in real world application, when you buy that reel, you've paid for those features. We don't just include them in there for no cost.
Right.
If you're not using them, you are wasting your money. So it's so common to see a kid come up and pick up one of those reels thinking that they know exactly what to do. And I hate to correct them. I hate to walk over to them while I see them, kind of fiddling with the reel and go, hey, wait. No. Let me educate you a little bit. I don't like to be that guy, but I want to educate them a little bit,
Yeah.
So I appreciate you guys giving me or Daiwa the platform to tell people.
Yeah. Well, and the thing
that's not a thing that's talked about a lot with reel manufacturers and how to actually dial in a reel. You never hear anybody talking about it. But that's a big thing, and knowing how to dial your reel in, knowing how to adjust it properly. And I exclamation point on the word properly, because like you said, a lot of people think they know what they're doing when they're adjusting a reel, but they really don't.
Yeah.
Right. Now, and I tell people, because they'll ask me what reels and stuff to get, and Norman and stuff gets the same thing, and I'll tell them, I was like, if you want something you can just pick up out of a box, put on a reel or on a rod, and go fishing, Daiwa is the one that you want to go to, because it's really that simple. I mean, just like what you were saying earlier, Chris, was all you got to do is just adjust the braking, and that's it. I mean, if people can just get that through their mind and kind of forget what they've learned, that they got to mess with every. And it is, and
it's really as simple as just casting 3 or 4 times till it feels right coming off the rod tip. I mean, that's it. Basically, you're either going to back the magnets off or go the other direction with them. It's as simple as that, and trial and error.
Well, another thing is, though, is I just want to know whose fingers can actually grip that thing to actually turn it. It's hard for me to even turn the thing.
Dude, I hear you loud and clear. It's these oil field workers. I'm telling you, it's these guys that are seriously hardworking guys that come out there and just get after it. I mean, I will say, with the zero adjuster, once it's kind of loosened up a little bit, it definitely does get easier to move back and forth. But man, out of the factory, they're tough. I can't do it.
And that's I mean, to me, and that's what I told my dad. I was like, stop messing with it. You don't have to. Because I was over there when I was fixing his reel. I mean, I was like pushing up like with my finger, trying to turn it and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know how he done it, but he turned it, and he was able.
Yeah.
That during manufacturing of the reels too by Daiwa, that might be a reason Daiwa does that on those, make it really hard, so you can't get in there and turn them.
That's a funny
Make it
point. I
harder
mean,
for you to do.
that's a funny point. I mean, yeah, absolutely. We don't want people moving those around because, like I said, you're not getting the full advantage of all the features that you've paid for. But the other part of it, though, is how many times have you guys done that to a reel? You look down and that cap is gone, never to be found again.
Nope.
Right? You know what? Like I said, when I was working customer service, I would get, if not every third or fourth call, a young guy, older guy, middle-aged guy calling in saying they lost that cap because they backed it off too far. And that was a fun conversation for me because it gave me an opportunity to kind of educate them on, okay, when you get this cap, this is kind of how these things should be set up for you. As long as you do it this way, you'll never have that happen to you again on really any reel.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Chris, because I've been guiding for over 18 years now, and I have clients that's using, because I supply the rods and the reels for my clients. They don't have to bring a thing. Just I supply
Show it.
everything. And I have clients that I look back, and they say there's a piece missing on the reel, and I go back there, and that cap's gone. I'm like, how in the heck? What are you doing? You're not supposed to be. I didn't. It's just gone. And I'm like, how do you lose? They have to be trying to turn it as they're, and I have everything preset for them for the baits we're throwing. Everything's adjusted perfectly, but you still get clients on the back of my boat that's messing with them as they're casting, thinking they're actually trying to adjust them better than I already have them. And as a matter of, I just got back from Florida. I was guiding 3 weeks down there in South Florida, and I have a reel right now sitting on my stand. Just came out. I just started pulling the stuff out of the boat, and I didn't even know it was gone. I have a reel that I pulled out of my rod box, still on the rod, and the cap's missing. I'm like, how? I've never lost a cap in my life myself using it. And I have clients. I'm like, how in the heck is my clients losing? I mean, they have to be turning them when I'm not looking. I'm like, how do you do that? But it's funny you mention that because I have one right back there right now when I got back from Florida. That darn cap's gone.
It happens all the time. And just so your audience is aware, Daiwa does offer parts sales for any and all of our current model reels and up to 5 years after discontinuation on any reel. So if anybody out there is missing one of those caps, give our customer service team a call. If you can't identify the parts that you need, we've got a team of specialists that can help you identify the parts specific to your particular model number. We're glad to help you guys out, get those parts ordered up and shipped out to you.
And I will say something too, Chris. You're spot on with your customer service department and your parts.
Oh yeah, that was.
I actually had a call a while back. I had one of my clients from Indiana. He asked me if I could clean. He had like 18 reels. He asked me if I could just oil them for him. So he sent me a big box of reels, and half of them was Daiwa. And there was a couple of them that I actually needed to replace parts that was really worn on them. They were older reels. So I actually called customer service there, and they were very, very, very customer oriented, helped me out big time. They were able to actually walk me through what parts I needed. Part numbers made it so simple for me to order them, and they got them to me really quick. So as far as the customer service, you're spot on with that, because I personally have the experience of having to call them about 6 months ago.
Love to hear it.
Well, and going back to losing the caps and stuff, Chris, he's also had somebody to where he's caught more fish or is catching more fish than this other person. And the other person was trying to get even with him. So when he wasn't looking, he loosened up everything that he had on the deck just for the fact of where he was having to spend time to fix what the issue that he had. And so that other person thought. So, but let's go to the spinning. The spinning reels, and and I've only got 4 Daiwa spinning reels, and I've got one. What is it? The Legacy
Legalis.
But can you talk about that the Legalis and I also want to talk about the Eliminator.
Yeah, we can talk about both. So yeah, I mean, in the Legalis is that $69-$99 price point reel, affordable.
Yeah.
Affordable, and like I said again, it's one of those terms that I like to throw out there. It is the best value. Or one of the best values in the lineup. It's lacking on a few features that you'll find in some of our higher end reels, but for that price point, it is very, very hard to beat. It fishes like $120 reel, but at that $69-$99 price point. What I like about that, go ahead.
And that was the reason why I purchased it. Just to put onto a crappie, because I was like, I don't want to go spend $100 on or whatever on just to have a reel for a crappie rod, because I don't use a crappie rod that much, but just besides in the wintertime. And so I was very impressed with the quality and how it actually worked. I was very pleased with it.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Legalises. I kind of started out with those when I first moved over to Daiwa, and like this was before I worked for them. I liked the Legalis for the price point. It was several generations of the Legalis ago, but yeah, no, great reels. I mean, the features in that reel are advanced for that price. I like that it has the Digi gear, which is our DigiCut gearing system. It's a lighter weight gear, but it definitely has that phenomenal blending of the gear teeth between the pinion, oscillation, and the drive gear. I mean, it really is everything that you need it to be at that price point, but maintain that elite level feel to it with the way that those gears are cut. The rotation on the rotor is almost effortless. It's not as effortless as it is on an Exist, a $900 reel, but I mean for general practical use, it's everything that you need it to be. It's got the air bail on there, that really nice lightweight bail. It allows anglers to trip that bail really easily. Not everybody does a manual bail closure with their hands. I'm one of those guys, again, from saltwater. It's just a natural habit for me to manually close the bail. I'm getting a little bit better at it with freshwater, where you kind of have to be a little bit more reactive once your bait hits the water to just kind of quickly rotate that handle and engage it. But with that air bail being so much lighter than a traditional wire bail, it flaps over just nice and easily without feeling clunky. You know what I mean?
Right. I did know that was one thing I did notice, and that it was. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I guess like with y'all's design, that y'all have designed everything to kind of take that bulkiness out of everything, to where it is comfortable. To where, I mean, when we go out 8-10 hours a day, you don't want to have a big old bulky reel in your hand. So
no, especially when you're pulling on a fish that might only be half pound, quarter pound at a time.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed too, Chris, is you're talking about the closing the bail once you make your cast manually by hand, or cranking the handle over to close it. That's the one thing I noticed too about Daiwa, is Daiwa has a smoother transition to be able to turn your handle and close the bail. Which I mean, me personally, I've used all brands across the board, and that's the one thing with a lot of the other brands that I've noticed is, and I, even when I'm using Daiwa, I am a big doing it by hand, and that just goes back to fishing with a lot of other brands. it's a hard transition, and when you have that hard transition of turning the handle, it almost feels like you're going to break the spool and the bail because it's such a hard transition to close it with the handle. Well, what you're getting is you're getting a lot of hard wear on the reel now, and the mechanisms in the reel trying to snap that bail closed by the handle. But the transition of closing the bail with the handle is so much smoother with Daiwa. You don't have that almost that where you feel like you're going to break the bail trying to close
or
it by
bend
the
the
handle.
handle
You
or
don't have a
something.
running start with it. Right, there's a lot smoother transition to the point where a lot of these other brands, I'm afraid to try to do it with the handle because you almost feel like you're going to break it because it's such a tight and hard, and then when it does, it snaps over so hard. And I've always felt that it's hard on the mechanisms in the handle itself because you're putting a lot of strain on them to try to close it without manually physically doing it.
A
So
really
that's
cool
the one thing I know about Daiwa is you have it has a smoother transition when you are trying to close it with the handle.
A really cool thing that one of our service technicians, again, Daiwa does offer full service on all of our reels as well. So call and get that reel sent over to us. I'll help you out with that. But yeah, we do have some really talented technicians in our service department. And one of them showed me a really cool thing about the spinning reels, particularly the LT lineup of reels, which is what we're talking about, a Legalis LT. If you'll hold the reel upside down and look at the either arm, there's going to be a portion underneath up against the rotor where you can see the bail trip mechanism in action as it rotates around the handle. Or around the spool. And if you'll just look under the side there, you'll see where that arm kind of reaches out and it hits that pivot point. So, feeling it is one thing, but being able to visually see how the mechanism works can change your entire mindset of how it's functioning while you're on the water. So I'll recommend anybody out there that has a Daiwa LT reel, pick it up upside down, fold that bail over and look to see, where that arm is and how it reacts with the body of the reel to cause that closure to happen. Once you see how it works, it'll be a no-brainer as to, if you're having any complications with it getting stuck, or if you feel like you're applying too much pressure, all of that will be cleared up. But I'm telling you, just look on the underside of the reel when you open up that bail. I mean, you can barely see it on the end of my pinky right there. That's the clutch, the bail trip arm right there beneath my pinky. And as it rotates, you'll see that it'll hit a portion on the body. Unfortunately, it's obstructed by the stem here. But in person, you can see where it runs into a portion on the body where there's that ramp, like you said, that gradual closure. It's not as abrupt. So you can kind of visualize the mechanics on how it works. But yeah, another awesome feature that makes it so easy to use.
Yeah. So what are the features that's different in between that and the Legalis?
So yeah, I mean the Eliminator models are definitely a saltwater oriented reel. So that's number one. There's a big difference between a saltwater oriented reel and a freshwater oriented reel. As far as the freshwater reels goes, the entire LT lineup is freshwater oriented reels up until you get up to the higher end models, or even like a Fuego. We can get into that a little bit later. But the Eliminator model at that $99 price point is essentially just like a BG. Have you guys used BGs before? Heard of BGs? Okay, yeah. So it's a saltwater market thing or saltwater application thing. The BG is been the standard for saltwater spinning reels for a very long time. A lot of history there with the BG series. The Eliminator is basically the little brother to that. So what the Eliminator really has going for it is, like I said, beefed up components for a saltwater environment. So it has a thicker gear. It's a digi gear, but a thicker gear than a traditional LT reel. So you've got a little bit more power, a little bit more durability there. It's also going to have more heavier duty components for saltwater. So a more robust body construction, aluminum body construction, as opposed to a carbon light body, and a different orientation of the bail mechanism. So on most traditional spinning reels, they use what we call a cam spring for the bail trip mechanisms, which is great if for light duty application. It does everything that a bail spring needs to do. It's essentially a two arm that kind of curls over like that and then springs out like this way. With the Eliminator models, they use a coil spring that maneuvers the arm in a coil. So you get a lot better longevity out of a bail spring like that, which is really only important in a saltwater application where the reel is going to be exposed to the corrosive nature of salt water. So that's the major differences between a Legalis and an Eliminator or a BG model. The Eliminator also has a shaft through handle design, which is kind of hard to explain if you don't know what I'll show you. Like this is a Fuego LT, one of my favorites. We'll have to talk about this one here in just a moment. This is a Fuego LT, and you can see it uses where's my camera here? A screw-on type of handle design where the actual handle screws onto the reel body. Right. The Legalis and the Eliminator models have the traditional style where there is like a shaft that runs through the reel body, through that main drive gear. You know what I'm talking about, Colin?
Yeah.
And that's
because I have an Eliminator that I use. I didn't really realize that it was for saltwater, but I use it like when I go down to the Everglades for the peacocks.
Sure. Yep.
And then like if I'm wanting to throw a spinning rod or spinning reel and all that for like stripers, that I use that as like my heavier reel. And that's the reason why I was wanting to talk about it, is because I have it and that's what I use it for, is for like the striper fish and for the peacocks. And
but I didn't realize heavier duty needs.
Right. And so I knew that it was a heavier duty reel. I didn't realize though that it was for saltwater.
Well, I mean, it's I mean, people definitely use the BGs and the Eliminators in freshwater as well. But it doesn't have the weight reduction components that a Legalis does. Right. Because you're looking for that heavier durability. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like I said, with the Eliminator models, it's got that a little bit bigger gear, so definitely going to give you that heavier, or that greater durability, a little bit more power, and just give you that general feel like it's not going to fold over on you while you're tangling up against a nice size striper or a nice size peacock. Yeah.
Now for your saltwater fishermen, and I never recommend to fishermen unless they really know what they're doing as far as tearing a reel apart, putting it back together. I never recommend to anglers that I talk to or talks to me to clean their own reels unless they really know what they're doing, because you get yourself into trouble if you don't know what you're doing when you're taking a reel apart, trying to oil it, trying to clean it. Do the annual service on the reel that you're supposed to do anyway. But for the saltwater fishermen, which isn't talked about a lot as far as when you get off the water from saltwater. Of course, everybody knows what saltwater does to anything when you're.
You would hope.
The salt air. What is the steps for a saltwater fisherman with the reels when they come off the water to be able to actually wash the reels, rinse the reels? Is there a process that you recommend taking as far as? I know you need to run water through them, clean them on a more of an annual base, or more of a frequent basis when you're a saltwater fisherman. But is there steps to take to pull the spools off and stuff like that to make sure you get every little bit of salt out of it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, as far as like you said, the casual angler that doesn't have the experience with tearing their reels apart and putting them back together, which is the most important part, is being able to put them back together. Anybody can tear them apart. And just so we're all clear, again, worked customer service, we have that happen all the time. We receive bags of parts of reels all the time. Do not be ashamed to send your bag of parts to us. We're glad to put it all back together. But anyways, as far as, the regular maintenance goes on a saltwater reel, rinse it off with fresh water after every use. Just rinse it off with fresh water. And I know, everybody kind of has their different idea of what rinsing with fresh water means. I'm sure that I will say something in what I'm about to say that will completely, other people will say I'm totally wrong in what I'm doing. And that's fine. Everybody has their things. I know what works for me. You guys know what works for you.
2.5 years.
Right. In general, rinse it off with fresh water. Whether it's a spinning or a bait casting reel, rinse it off with fresh water. I do mine just with a light shower setting on my hose, rinse it off with fresh water, hit all sides of it, crank the handle once. And that's pretty much it. The only other thing that I do after I'm done rinsing it off, give it a little shake, get all the excess water off of it, back off your drags. I'll say that again. Rinse it off with fresh water. Back off the drags. With a spinning reel, particular to the LT lineup of reels, they will either use a carbon fiber drag system or they will use a grease impregnated felt washer drag system. Either one of those is subject to being compressed and warped over time if that pressure is left on them. What that means is that over time, they're either going to get sticky or they're going to get bumpy as they pay line out. It's going to start to surge rather than be an even payout. That doesn't really have much to do with the saltwater aspect of it, but it's definitely worth noting. After you've rinsed your reels off with fresh water, just back that drag off. It'll prevent you from having to get new drag washers every other year or so, and it'll maintain you having a nice, smooth drag payout. The other thing that I'll say, after you rinse off with fresh water, bring them into an air-controlled environment, a climate-controlled environment. Humidity can continue to cause damage. You don't want to leave them outside in the garage. If it's a reel that you really care about, you don't want to leave them outside in the garage that has, open vents to the outside. My grandmother lives down in Galveston. I take fishing equipment there all the time, and she uses it here and there. They'll leave it outside in their garage, and I will come back the following year after bringing brand new equipment and find them in the garage, and they will have roughness on them. It's not because she's using them like crazy. She's 90 years old. I'm probably the only one that's out there using them a couple times a year. But when she does, she'll put them back into the garage and let them stay there. And that humidity will cause corrosion to continue to happen. So not any fault of her. She doesn't know any better. Totally fine. I take them back with me. I get them all fixed up. Not to worry. But yeah, take them into it. Like I said, if it's a reel you really care about, bring it into a climate controlled environment. If you can get it, to that point where you don't have a lot of humidity in the air, it's going to allow the internal parts of the reel to dry off as well as the external. And then, like we recommend with any purchase, you look in our manual, it'll tell you once a year maintenance send in is recommended. Bait casting, conventional, spinning, any of it. Send them in once a year, or in Colin's case, every 2.5 years, whatever works for you. But here's what I will tell you though. People think, oh man, it's going to be such a hassle to send my reel in and yada, yada, yada. The reality is, yes, you're going to have to cover the shipping to get it over to us. For any bait casting reel or spinning reel in that low to mid tier, you're going to be looking at only $40 for a bait casting reel. That covers the complete breakdown of the reel, cleaning, relubrication, reassembly, box up, check it out, box it up, send it back to you. Again, $40 for the entire country. We don't charge you extra for the shipping back to you. Spinning equipment in that low to mid tier, $30. Now, if your reel is really messed up and you need new gears and things like that, yeah, there might be additional costs for those extra parts. But generally, for most general reel services that require additional parts, not looking really much more than $50, $60, as long as it's not in that bad a shape. But if it's just a standard service, $30 a year really ain't that much to ensure that you've got a reel that's going to work for you when it really matters.
Exactly. And what people have to realize too is annually cleaning, annually oiling, lubricating your reel. Get it done right. It's being done right. It's getting put back together right, and it's going to be it's going to be backed when it comes back because you have the manufacturer doing it for you. But here's the thing. Look at the longevity you're going to have out of this reel if you annually keep up with the reel. If you don't maintain your reel over time and you're an avid fisherman and you use your equipment a lot, you're only going to get a year or 2 years max out of a reel if you don't take care of it. It's just like a car. You're going to take your car in for an 100%. Oil change and service. If you don't do it, if you buy a car and you don't have an oil change in 6 years, that car is going to last you probably not even 6 years. If you don't 100%. Maintain your vehicle, there's no different in reels.
But that goes back.
You'll have a good reel that's going to last you years and years. So really the amount of money you're going to spend to have it maintained, to have it cleaned, to have it lubricated on an annual basis is actually going to be money in your pocket over a long term, because you're not going to have to buy a new reel every year, 2 years by keeping up with your stuff.
Yep.
But that goes back to what we was talking about at the beginning, was the quality.
Yeah.
Being able to, if you take care of it, the quality that they put into the reels and you take care of it, it's going to last you forever until you're done with it.
So, or until it's obsolete. Daiwa, our technology moves pretty quickly. Like I said, we offer support for all of our equipment up to 5 years after its discontinuation, meaning we keep parts in stock 5 years after discontinuation. Most reels are kept in line for no less than 5 years, sometimes dozens of years. I mean, as we're talking about the BG lineup, those reels, before this current generation of BG, the previous one was in our lineup for I think 3 decades. So, we're definitely there to offer as much support as we can to keep your reels working as best you can. But we can only do so much. If we don't have your reels sent in to us, we can't help you when it's too far gone.
Right.
So, I mean, we certainly can, but it's going to cost you. Would you rather have, like you guys said, $30 a year, $40 a year, or every couple of years, or would you rather have to buy a new reel for $200 every year? What do you want to do?
Well, I do both of them.
Well, me too, but you know what I mean. But I wanted to talk about, because we're talking about saltwater corrosion prevention, maintenance, all that kind of stuff. We can't talk spinning reels without mentioning the Fuego LT. A lot of your audience might already be fishing with the Fuego LTs, but this is a reel that if an angler out there is considering getting a spinning reel for freshwater, saltwater, maybe they travel back and forth to do a little bit of both, the Fuego LT is a phenomenal reel for that. It's going to behave very similar to a Legalis LT in terms of that overall smoothness, the drag pressures, the smooth rotation, all that kind of stuff. But a key feature on the Fuego LT model is what we call mag seal. Mag seal is essentially a magnetic oil barrier between the main shaft that moves that spool up and down and the rotor itself. So with that, you're preventing any kind of debris, salt water, any of that kind of stuff from intruding into the reel body. It's a very advanced feature, but only $109 price point.
Oh, I mean, so what I paid for that eliminator, I could have got that.
You could have. And this is something that you should definitely be on your radar next call. And if you're doing any kind of saltwater or any kind of heavier duty fishing, keep the Fuego LT in mind. They go up to a 6,000 size even, but they still have that nice lightweight feel like your Legalis.
Now, how does it do with, because we got somebody on here, Chris, that loves catching drums. So can, will that, so will that reel be good for about 25, 30 pound drums?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. The max drag pressure is 22 pounds on that.
Right.
So, I mean, you've got plenty of drag pressure. What you're going to have to keep in mind is, the size of the reel that you buy and the line capacity that you want to have. If you're fishing in an area where you've got a nice wide open flat and you can kind of tire that fish out, then, you can load that reel up with 20 pound or 30 pound braid and have plenty of capacity to tire that fish out. Yeah. If you're fishing in an area where you've got a lot of snags or submerged rock, or you're fishing along a bridge piling or some worn out dock pilings and things like that, yeah, you can definitely load it up with some 40, 50 pound braid and really apply as much pressure as you need to bring those fish in. It's got that larger digi gear inside there. It's got the mag seal system, like I said, it's got the 22 pound drag system, plenty of power there to tangle with larger grade of fish, and plenty of line capacity to do it as well. So black drum, reds, any of that kind of stuff, no problem.
So Norman, you're taken care of when you go to Nickajack.
There you go. There you go. The only other reel, there's one more in the spinning lineup that I do have to mention, and I'm sorry to take up a little bit of time here.
You're good.
The Tatula MQ. This is the Tatula MQ. This one is the current model Tatula spinning reel in the lineup. Cool thing about this model is if you'll look at the body panel here, you won't see any frame screws.
No.
So I'll compare that to the Fuego here. You'll see where you've got these frame screws right up under there,
right,
and one right there. Okay. So with those frame screws, saltwater or freshwater, those screws act as a point where water can potentially pool. And this is for all brands, not just Daiwa. Any brand reel, you take a look at a spinning reel, you'll see these side plate screws. That's a portion of the reel where water can pool, cause corrosion, and potentially intrusion into the reel body. This is going to cause damage to your gearing, going to get rough, bearings are going to go out, stuff like that. With an MQ body design, you'll see no frame screws. Not on this side either.
Now, what kind of reel? That's not one of those. That's just a screw reel, right? Instead of
for the handle, it's going to be a screw-on type handle. The Fuego also has a screw-on type handle design too. Okay. But what I'm getting at with this is that not only are you removing places where water can pool and cause corrosion, because you're eliminating those screws, you've got more portion inside the body. You've got more room inside the body, so you can put a larger gear, which is what we did. The MQ body style reels have about a 40% thicker gear compared to a traditional LT or traditional standard body style reel. So you've got more gear to work with. So you get a longer gear life, more durability, and this entire panel seals on 360 degrees around the outside, and it's supported by 2 gaskets. So you've got tremendous gear life, tremendous smooth rotation and just, durability built in because you're not fighting for space inside that reel body.
Yeah, that will definitely be one that you got to send back to have them clean.
Yes, yeah. Well, for any of the reels with the mag seal or that MQ body style, we do have regional warranty and service centers. We're working on getting the tooling out to those regional service centers to work on MQ body style reels. And there are some that also do offer mag seal service as well. You just got to call our customer service team or look on our website. But yeah, we do it all in-house too.
Yeah, that is awesome. So we're going to wrap it up with that, Chris, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And but guys, we are going to. This isn't the last time that you have seen Chris on our podcast.
No,
because we thoroughly enjoy picking his brains, being able to talk. I mean, and as you can see, I've tried to even just pull out some stuff to try to stump him, and I pulled out some stuff just to see if I could stump him, and he knew what this was. And I'm like, how in the world? He's very informative of what about the Daiwa's series, if it's reels, rods. I mean, it's been an honor, Chris, to be able to have you on here just to be able to talk. I mean, because when somebody can go to a store and look at a product and hold it in the hands and they see something that you have talked about and they're like, oh, I know what that is. It makes it a whole lot easier for somebody to make that purchase when they know exactly what it's for and what it's going to do for them.
Exactly. And Chris, just to let everybody know, in case anybody wants to go on the website and check out the product line, what Daiwa has to offer, what is the website for our viewers to go on and actually be able to check out the product online?
Yeah, website is simple, www.daiwa.us. That is spelled DAIWA.us. A lot of people mess that one up. There are, unfortunately, out there a lot of scam websites that try to copy Daiwa. Be very aware. While we're on that note, that Diawa U.S.A. does not sell direct to consumers. We sell to retailers, but we do not sell direct. So if you pull up a website and it's offering you, some percentage off, you're at the wrong one. Retype that in, DAIWA.us. That's our official website. It's got the full lineup of everything on there. Freshwater, saltwater, reels, rods, apparel. We actually just launched our direct-to-consumer site for all of our apparel. So if you want to get this hat, you want to get a long-sleeve shirt, we've also
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah,
Norman, we got to get one of them hats.
I'll bring you guys some at the Classic. I'll get you guys some at the Classic.
Awesome, man.
So,
absolutely.
But, but Chris, man, we deeply appreciate it. Guys, we're going to see Chris here actually within about a week, a little over a week.
I guess about a week and a half.
Yeah, and we're going to shoot some videos with him again, and maybe I can get my buddy Clay Dyer to come and do something for us as well.
Let's do it. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we can shoot some more content for you guys while we're out there. Maybe even do a little short cast while we're there in the booth. Talk about some of the awesome stuff that's coming out. We got, the zillion rods coming out, new spinning, the new stees will be there. So some exciting stuff for us to cover.
Yeah, and I think, we'll be able to talk about that new reel that we hadn't been able to talk about either.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
At the Classic Expo.
Stay tuned.
So guys, thank you for watching. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact the customer service at Diawa, because both Norman and myself have both had to use it, and they are pretty on point with everything and very informative as well. So, but other than that, I'm tired
Well, I do apologize for talking both of y'all's ear off. I'm sure I probably went a little more detail than we needed, but it's
well, that's the thing. That's like what we told you before, Chris. Is I mean, we don't mind going in the details. I mean, we can sit here and talk fishing and talk baits, reels, rods, or whatever. We can talk for days on it, and the more informative that we can talk about and get stuff out that to be able to either one help yourself be able to make a decision on some rods and reels, and that's what we're here for.
Well, I also will give myself a little plug here. If anybody's looking to ask any in-depth questions, I do have a personal Instagram that I'm definitely open to public interaction on. My Instagram is Fish Martin. That's at FISHMARTIN. Feel free to send me a DM. Glad to help with any questions you guys might have through there as well.
And we'll put that in the descriptions of the video as well. So we'll link it in to where all you got to do is just click on it and go. If you got any questions, or just go follow them. Anyways, just
thank you.
I mean, just follow them. So, but guys, we're going to get off here. And we're going to see you here in about a week and a half, Chris.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Norman. Thanks, Colin. You guys rock.
See you soon.
So, hope to see you out on the water. If not, live the passion, guys.
Live the passion, everybody.